very much. So hello everyone, thanks for joining, and thanks for completing those questions once again, but I'm going to move us along here. So today, you've joined us for today's Campus Cohort 8 Orientation and Training Series event titled Planning for Success, Year 1 Goals and Priorities. I'm Adam Chu, you guys have heard my voice already, and I'm a prevention specialist here at SPRC, and co-facilitating with me today is Bonnie Lipton, a campus prevention specialist at SPRC as well.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks, Bonnie. And before we go any further, I'm going to turn it over to Zoe again, actually, to do some review of technical information, so hang tight for that, and let's give her her slide. Go ahead, Zoe.
Hi, everybody. Just very quickly, if you're having any technical problems joining the webinar, please dial SPRC at 617-618-2984 or Adobe Connect at 1-800-422-3623. These phone numbers are also in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and will be for the whole meeting. If you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box at any time on the left-hand side of your screen where you answered the question. Everyone will be muted for most of the meeting, and we'll be unmuting the phones later, but if you need to communicate with us, just use the chat box. And finally, you can make your presentation screen larger at any time if you need to want to see the slides better by clicking just above where I'm hovering this green arrow on your screen, those 4 arrows in a row pointing out from each other. If you click on those, you will be able to make your slide bigger. If you click on them again, it'll get smaller. Adam, back to you.
Thank you, Zoe. All right, so as I said before, Bonnie and I are going to be leading you through today's webinar, so we thought we'd give you some faces to match with our names, so that's us. Here's our agenda for this webinar today. First, I'm going to give a kind of a crash course through SMART objectives, which some of you may be familiar with already, but that'll help us get our minds moving for the next item, where Bonnie and I, with your help, will walk through the Prioritizing Year 1 Goals Worksheet, which is actually your self-paced training series activity for the month. So we're giving you a little preview. Hopefully that'll give you a nice look at how to complete it with your teams. So after that, Bonnie's going to talk through how you might use the worksheet to prioritize objectives for the first grant year, and then we'll have some time for questions and wrap up around 4:30. This is just a recap of the learning objectives for this webinar, and you probably saw them in the invite, but in a nutshell, together we're going to go through a systematic approach for cataloging the goals, objectives, and actions related to your grant work by using an example, and then we're going to use that information to guide how you choose priorities in the first year of your grant. Along the way, we're going to ask for your help to supply us with some ideas and perhaps real-life experiences, if you have those to share too, as we complete the worksheet. And then we'll weigh some assets and your capacity against the challenges that you might come up against in implementing this work. And then Bonnie will help us make some decisions on priorities and take you through that last part of the worksheet. So as I said, before the worksheet, we're going to go through SMART objectives. Many of you have probably heard SMART objectives before. Once you've determined your long-range goal, the SMART framework can help you think more clearly about what you hope to achieve with your shorter-term goals and objectives. So first, as you can see the acronym there, you want to make sure your objective is specific. So that means your objective should answer the who and the what of your program activities. What exactly will your target audience get out of your intervention? Remember, the greater the specificity of your goals and objectives, the greater the measurability, which is going to help you definitely in your evaluation efforts. Next, you want to make sure that your objectives are measurable. And the focus here is on how much change is expected. Objectives should quantify the amount of change that you expect, and it's possible to determine whether your objectives have been met unless they can be measured. The A stands for achievable. Objectives should be attainable within a given time frame you've set for yourself and with available program resources. So this seems kind of like a no-brainer. Of course, you want to have your objectives be achievable, but oftentimes this is easier said than done, given your available program resources and other unintended or unforeseen circumstances that may stand in the way of something being achievable. The R stands for realistic. Objectives are most useful when they accurately address the scope of the problem and programmatic steps that can be implemented within a specific time frame. So it's closely tied to the objective being achievable, and it's something you really feel like you can accomplish during the life of the project. And last, the objective should be time-specific. Objectives should be made with a time frame indicating when the objective will be measured or time by which the objective should be met. and this also really helps in planning and evaluating your program. So we'll do a few examples here, and I'm going to ask actually for some chat input from all of you out in the audience. So if our objective is to create a brochure to increase awareness of mental health services available to students on campus, what do we think? Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it achievable, realistic, time specific? Is there anything missing there? Please chat that into the chat box and let me know what you think. I'll give you a second to look at that and think that through. Looks like Wendy and a couple others are typing. Thank you. I'll wait for you to get those responses in. Haggis says not time specific. Yeah, that's true. There's no time frame given for this objective. You could make a time frame by adding during the first year, create a brochure to increase awareness, et cetera, with the rest of the goal. Let's see. Yep, Melanie says by when will it be finished? That's great. When is it distribute to what number of people? Yep, that's true. You can include that, make it more measurable. Heidi says missing time, specificity, measurement. Yep, those are all right. So with measurement, yeah, not so much. You need to collect the number of how many brochures were distributed, and did students get mental health services because they saw the brochure. That's part of the goal too, is them being aware of mental health services and are they going to get them. Maybe this particular objective, like the brochure, is not doing that exactly, but that'd be something to consider as well. Jessica says, how will students' awareness be measured? That's great. So I'm seeing yes to it being specific, measurable, not so much, achievable. I don't think anybody commented on that specifically, but it seems like something that could be achieved during the grant. Realistic, I would say yes to an extent, personally. I think it does address the problem. It seems like the brochure would increase awareness, but whether or not this objective goes so far as to increasing help-seeking behavior and having students actually get mental health services, I don't know that this kind of objective actually addresses that. And then a good handful of you said, no, there's not really a time frame here, so they'd need to make a little revision and add that. That's great. So let's do it once more. So this time, the objective is develop educational seminars around time management and conflict resolution for first-year students. So do we think this is this one that's a little bit more about developing life skills? Do we think this one is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time specific? Let's see, Luis is typing. A couple people typing, thinking it through. That's good. Jennifer says, no time frame again, so it's unclear if it's achievable. That's true, no time frame. It could, depending on what's realistic for what you've got programmatically in your assets, you could add a timestamp there. Luis also says, yes, missing time frame. That's true. Heidi says, missing measurement, and will all first years be targeted? If so, is there resource capacity? Is that achievable? Yeah, that's an even more specific programmatic consideration to think through. That's great, Heidi, thanks. Maureen says, need some deadlines and specificity of topics. Yep, you could include that in there, make it more specific, and you could break out your measurements in different ways depending on the topic. Melanie's typing here. A couple other people are typing as well. We'll let a couple more responses come in here. How many educational seminars? Yeah, I think that's great. How are you going to quantify how many you have? Is that going to be part of your goal or part of your objective here? Yep, Sally also says how many seminars. That all helps with how you're measuring your work here. Great. Well, I'm not seeing others typing right now, so I think we'll call it for this particular example. So specific, yeah, I think it's specific to an extent. The who are the first-year students. The what is creating educational seminars. They might consider adding the number of seminars. I think that would make it more specific, and a couple of you commented on that. Measurable. Not really. How are you going to quantify the amount of change expected here? A, it seems achievable unless you don't have the capacity to hold all the first-year students, let's say. I think somebody commented about that. Realistic, yeah, it's addressing a problem. Time management and conflict solution, you might realistically expect that the seminars would help deliver information that students could use to improve their time management skills and conflict resolution skills. And then a couple folks said this as well, it's not time-bound, no time frame for this objective. Great, so let's move on here. Something else I wanted to have us think through is that, and some of you alluded to it in the comments you made, but having the SMART objectives can only bring you so much success. You know, going back to your goals, it's important to work through your assumptions and the logic behind the goals that you've set and identify any gaps there might be there. So, you know, what else might stand in the way between your goals and the outcomes that you want? So let's just go through an example of this. Let's say, to take an example we use, if we create a brochure to increase awareness of mental health services for students, they will be more likely to seek help. Are there other barriers or gaps in our logic here that would prevent students who are on campus and you create a brochure for them? What could be still preventing them from seeking help? I see a couple people typing here. Larry says stigma, okay. Leslie says, do we have the capacity to provide additional services? That's certainly a barrier. Consideration. Wendy is saying, is there capacity of services to accommodate increasing numbers? Heidi says, recognizing suicide risk factors, addressing stigma, capacity for services. Jennifer says, cultural considerations of clients who may seek help. That's great, yep. Sally with the comment, our students don't pick up brochures. Yeah, that's actually something I wrote down too. Students will actually access the brochure, find it on campus, and then read it. That'd be a first blockage to you conveying the information. That's great. Ellen says, assumption that lack of knowledge is the only issue. That's great. There could be many other things on campus that are getting in the way of knowledge. Maybe knowledge isn't the only thing to focus on. I think that's why we talk about having a comprehensive approach. There's other ways to support a brochure like this that may fill in those gaps. If knowledge is not the only thing to address. Susan says, does this need to be online? That kind of picks up on our students don't pick up brochures. Where are they accessing the information, and what kind of information do they want to access? Lara says, some students utilize online services exclusively. I think that goes really well with Susan's point. Louis says, access to services, stigma, awareness does not always result in action. So there were a couple folks that pointed out stigma, and you know that could be stigma towards seeking help that a person feels upon themselves, you know, what their personal beliefs are about mental health and mental health services. They could be stigmatizing themselves. They could feel like stigma that could be coming from the rest of campus if they're going somewhere. And I also wanted to point out it could be something more logistical, like the stigma is related to the mental health services being in a place on campus where everyone knows you're going there because it's in a specific place on campus where there's not a lot of other buildings, let's say, or it's right in the middle of where all the action is on campus, and then everyone sees you getting services. So that's kind of a environmental aspect of stigma that you could think about as well. We have two other comments here, I think. Susan says, would be good to have student input on ideas such as this, particularly for dissemination strategies. That's great. I think getting the students involved, you could do an informal focus group to figure out what kind of information would be good on there, where they're going to find this information, where they're going to pick it up. And Ellen says, who is the target of the brochure? Great. I guess it's kind of non-specific there. The brochure is about awareness of mental health for students, but does that mean you're giving it to parents? Yeah, I guess that's something you want to clarify with your team as well. Great. So those were a lot of great examples of maybe some gaps in the logic here for this one. Let's do one more. I'll take just a few comments on it. I think everybody's thinking in the right direction here. So for this example, if we develop educational seminars around time management and conflict resolution for first-year students, they will be able to cope better. So what do we think here? Where there's some gaps? What are we assuming will happen so that students will cope better if we do this? Alan's typing, Marine's typing. Great. Maureen, yes, assuming they'll attend the seminars. Definitely. Ellen says, where is the data to support the statement? Yeah, that's something that I wrote down too. I said, is that really a problem they're having in the first year? Do we know on campus there's issues with conflict resolution and time management with our first year students? What is your assessment there? How do you know that this is something you should be planning to do? Larry says, it doesn't address many mental health issues. I think Larry brings up an interesting point. It doesn't directly address mental health issues. If we think about a comprehensive approach to suicide prevention, I would certainly say the time management and stress management, let's say, even and conflict resolution certainly falls under a category we think of more as developing life skills for college students, which is good suicide prevention, but it's true, it is less on the mental health side, Larry. When it says, what is the tool for assessing if the students learn something? That's great. It's a good evaluation question, and that would get back to the measurability here, which we brought up when we did the example with the SMART acronym. Great. So I'm going to move us ahead. I think you all did a fantastic job there. Thanks for providing feedback. That was actually good practice. But what we're going to do with this worksheet, I'm going to be asking for your opinions to help us complete that. So thank you again. And the reason we went through these examples is just to show the importance of mapping out your goals and objectives so you can hopefully identify strategies and interventions that will be likely to bring about the outcomes that you're looking for. So thanks a lot for that. So let's move us on here. So I have just before we go to the worksheet, there's just a few things I want to say before we go ahead and do that as a group. So before we get started, I want to recognize that you probably already have your goals, objectives, actions, et cetera, written out. So Bonnie and I certainly aren't suggesting that you overhaul your goals, rewrite things, or make any fundamental changes. That's not something we're asking you to do. This exercise is really meant to help you take what you already have established in your proposals and lay things out so you can make some decisions about what to pursue and do in year one. There's a lot going on. You're writing this orientation series and you're getting a lot of information, but we want to have give you a way to think that through. It's not possible to kick everything off in the first year, and that's why the goal here is prioritizing. Last, for the purpose of this worksheet, Bonnie and I used a hierarchy that contains goals, objectives, and actions, with goals being the highest level, actions being the most specific or nitty-gritty level. And the goals here are long-term and less specific than the objectives, as you might imagine. So what I'm going to do is I'll ask Zoe to move us ahead, and if Bonnie can share her screen with us so we can see what this worksheet actually looks like. I think it'll help you visualize what we're going to be doing together today. So just give it a second if your screen changed color. That's good. All right, great. Looks like we have Bonnie's screen shared. Thanks for doing that, Bonnie. So we're here on the example screen here, and you'll notice the goal that's written there right at the top. It says increase student utilization of appropriate mental health services on and off campus. So that's not necessarily written like a SMART objective because it's a goal. It's a little higher up. So you may have a slightly different hierarchy than we're using here in terms of goal, objective, and action, and that's fine. You don't need to change yours overall or change yours when you're doing this worksheet as part of the self-paced activity for this month. You might just need to make some adaptations and think through this a little bit differently based on how you've written out your objectives and your goals so far. So with that, I'm going to say, why don't we get started? What you're seeing, I said, is Bonnie's screen. She's going to edit for us, so if you see her typing things in, that's good. And across the top of the table, we've got priority number, and that doesn't necessarily mean order of importance, but if you wanted to do this worksheet that way, you could. Then we also have the SMART objective, the performance measure, what success would look like, our time frame, important for our SMART objective, and a place to make note of any challenges that you can think of, and that could be around the assumptions that we thought through before for your own goals. So you can see we completed the first objective for you here in that first row titled example, and that's what we're going to work from to do the example here. Oh, thanks, Susan, for the comment there. She said it was a nice format. All right, so I'm going to give you just a second to go ahead and read across that example row, and then we'll move ahead. So go ahead. I'm going to be silent. You go ahead and read, and I'll give you a sec. All right, I think I'll give you a sec to read there. So now the table's got our objectives here. Bonnie, can we go down to the actions, please? You can scroll down just so you guys can see what the rest of this looks like. We'll give Bonnie a second here. There we go. Moving down, moving down. And, oh, can you go up a little further there, Bonnie, so we can see the top? Sorry. There's a little lag here. There we go. So we've got actions here. You're seeing another table, actually, that relates to the example objective you just read. So you can see at the top there, that first objective is here, and below it are the actions that are going to be contributing to that objective. So there's columns here for the action, team member responsible, timeline again, resources needed, TA needs, partners that you might need to bring in, and status. So this gets a little more nuts and bolts. It zooms in a little further. And we also filled in one action that would contribute to the first example objective. So to reiterate, you're going to be receiving this worksheet in just in the same form so that you can complete it with your teams for this self-paced activity for this month. So you'd fill in your own objectives, your own goals, your own actions, broken out however you've done it in your proposals, and then hopefully together you can fill that out and get everything on paper and do this as a part of your activity. So you'll be sent this, just to clarify. I think Susan asked a question down there. It'll be disseminated to you guys to do as your assignment. So Bonnie, if we can go back up to that first example objective. All right, great, thanks very much. So now it's your turn. We're going to get some input from you, and we can help you along the way here. But we've got an example and an action, and why don't we just stick with this goal and this particular example objective, and we'll see if you can help us think up some other actions. Let's see how much we can complete here in the next 30 minutes or so. So I'm actually going to ask, to make it easier, Zoe, if you don't mind unmuting everyone. So please mute your phone if it's loud where you are, and then you can chat in your comment on the Adobe platform or shout it out. I would love to hear some voices. Zoe.
Yep. Before I unmute, I'm just going to say what Adam said again. Be mindful of background noise and mute yourself if it gets too loud. And I may be individually muting people if their line becomes too noisy, and you'll just get a message that says your line's been muted.
Your microphone has been turned on.
Everyone's unmuted. Adam?
Thanks, Zoe.
Oh, no.
All right. I heard just a little background noise. Thanks for being mindful of that, everyone. Sally asked a question. I'm going to direct that one to your prevention specialist. You can chat that over with them and make a determination about that. And then the last thing I'll say before we get your input is you can make your screen bigger so that you can see everything at a font size you like if you need to do that. So for this first objective, let's go down to the action, Bonnie. What else? We want to increase overall student utilization of counseling services by 5% each year. We'll go down to the action page. Take a look there. We want to determine what the yearly student utilization rate is now. That'd be one thing we could do. What else do you think we could do to increase overall student utilization of counseling services on campus by 5% each year? And you can chat that in or type it in.
Or you can speak.
Thank you, Zoe. That's true. You should speak. Susan's typing.
Called the nurse line and ended up going to the ER. They called.
Susan says social marketing to increase awareness of services. Yeah, I could do social marketing, do some communications to get the word out about services. That might get you part of the way there, I think. If it seems like students don't know about where services are, don't know about services in general, what's available to them, that could go part of the way to increasing utilization, sure. Heidi says implement screening tools. So it seems like for implement screening tools, it would kind of need students to get to services. So I think it could fall under this. If they're coming in for different kinds of services, let's say, this example is related to counseling services in specific. So every campus is set up in such a way that you could do screening if they're coming in for a health visit and they need counseling services. You might be able to get some to that using a screening tool of some kind. Sure, thanks Heidi. Susan says host information sessions, so I think that kind of falls under the idea of some communications. Thanks. Louis says provide information about the student orientations. Yep, information services. Sally says doing classroom presentations and then tracking the number of students who come in for services. I like that one. It kind of fits in with the communications and student orientation info sessions. But Sally, I think, went a step further and said, hey, how are we going to measure that? We'll track the number of students who come in afterwards. And one thing you could think of is on intake, you could figure out how they learned about it. Was it at this information session? Ellen says conduct focus groups to determine why students may not feel comfortable using services. Yeah, I think that's a good. Why don't we put that one in there, Bonnie? Do this focus groups example here. I think that's great. Let Bonnie finish up typing here, and then I'll read. Louise had another example. Advertise services via Res Life, public safety, and classes. Yeah, a little bit more about getting the word out, so that's great. Thank you. So why don't we stick with these three examples since we can see them all on the screen, and they were all supplied by you, which I think is great. So if we want to create a social marketing campaign to increase awareness of mental health services on campus, you'd want to assign that role to somebody. It could be more than one person. You want to stick a timeline for completion for that. And then resources and TA needs and partners. Can anybody think of any resources you might need for creating a social marketing campaign or partners you might want to loop in, anything along those lines? This is typing. Oh, a couple people are typing. Great, I'll wait for you to type those in. Bonnie has assigned this first action to the fictitious Jane. A couple folks typing. This is great. I'll wait for those responses to come in here. Resources needed, TA needs, partners you might need to get involved. Larry says connect with public information office. Great. Graphic designer, maybe a marketing class. Getting some student involvement, that's great. Social norms data, establish accounts such as Twitter and Facebook. Great, getting those social media presences up and running. Yeah, Bonnie, why don't we put in establishing accounts, learning, doing some assessment of what the social norms are like, so we know what kind of information to put out there. Utilizing public information office, and then those are all good examples. We can stick with those, Bonnie. And while Bonnie's typing, how about for the second action there? You want to implement a screening tool for depression or anxiety. I think I kind of narrowed things down for us and said, if it's a general health visit of some kind, then we want to get them to the counseling services side. What do we think there? What kind of resources do you need there? Molly's going to help us do this. See Heidi's typing. Heidi says, identify appropriate screening tools to get buy-in from health services administrators. I think the latter half of what Heidi said, and definitely the first half too, very important, getting some buy-in from administrative level folks in health services. So Bonnie, why don't we certainly put that in there, getting buy-in from health services administrators. And then something like identify appropriate screening tools. If there's on-campus assets to help you identify that type of information, somebody else is using that, you can get some input from the other grantees. Let's say you can certainly use your prevention specialist there as well. Jennifer is saying provide interpretation guidelines / info on how to know if services are recommendations. So it sounds like some kind of decision tool, decision support tool related to the screening. So that might be important as well. Any other examples or resources needed there? If we don't, that's okay. We can move on to the next one. All right, great. Why don't we think of one or two for this last one? Conduct focus groups to determine why students may not feel comfortable using mental health services. What do we need to do for that one? Take one or two here. Couple people attending. Couple people typing. My thing says multiple attendees are typing, so my words got twisted there. Sally says recruit students. Yeah. Recruit students to be a part of the focus group. Reserve room and location. Yep, good, all good practical concerns here, logistics. Gain assistance from university relations office or marketing specialists. Yeah, that's a good thing. Identify someone outside of counseling to run the focus groups, perhaps. That could be something you can do. You would need some partnership there. Train facilitators, determine makeup of the groups. Yeah, these are all important concerns for focus groups in general. And let's see, snacks. Susan says snacks. Experience says that helps. Leslie says develop topics for discussion using current literature on help seeking. Great. Having some informed questions to have as part of the focus group. Great. Doing your due diligence there. I think snacks falls under the incentives for participation comment that Ellen just made there. Okay, good. So I think you kind of get the idea of, taking stock of what you've got, your resources, your assets, what's going to help you complete that action. So it's on a very specific level there. So why don't we run through another example? We gave you the first objective. So why don't we try and think through another objective. So Bonnie, if we go up to the first table with the goal and the example objective, does anybody want to take a shot at thinking up another objective that would contribute to increasing student utilization of appropriate mental health services on and off campus? Maybe something from your own project. You might have something that exists too.
I'm actually on.
I hear a little background chat. I just want to remind folks to mute themselves. If they're needing to talk to somebody else, we'd appreciate that. Thanks for being diligent about it. We're not seeing another objective, so I do have one we can put in. Bonnie, if you don't mind inputting an objective here for us, so we can try out another run here. And that is obtain at least 3 MOUs with off-campus mental health service providers by the end of the first grant year. Great, so the goal is related to services on and off campus. So this particular objective is related to getting students to those services off campus if we need to do that. And does anybody want to help think through this? Gets back to the SMART objective, really, some performance measures here. What do you think, based on our objective, what fits into these additional columns here? I'll go for one. I'll seed the conversation. So Bonnie, if you go over to what would success look like here, 3 MOUs secured sounds pretty good to me. That's right in the objective. Anyone else have any input on this one? Any other performance measures you see coming out of this particular objective? Just to clarify for everybody, by MOU I mean Memorandum of Understanding, so a more formalized agreement or partnership that you might have with an off-campus mental health service provider. I thought I saw somebody typing there. Nope, there we go. Satisfactory terms included in the MOUs. Okay, great. I think we can stick that under, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Leslie. It seems like maybe that goes under what would success look like here as a, as a part of the MOU. It's kind of a sub. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Leslie.
This is Zoe. I just jump in and remind folks you're all unmuted. A few of you are muted, but you probably got a message about that. And you can talk also if you have an idea you want to just discuss. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie, for breaking the verbal barrier there. Sally is saying invite them to be on an advisory committee. It sounds like that's with reference to the off-campus mental health service providers or organization that you're partnering with. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'm not sure if, let's hold on to that thought here, actually. I'm gonna propose another performance measure. It seems relatively straightforward. It's just numbers of MOUs created with off-campus mental health providers. Ellen says determine total number of resources available and determine if 3 is reasonable. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good, it seems even like that is a question you'd be asking yourself ahead of this kind of objective. So you're just kind of doing a more specific assessment of whether 3 is really an appropriate number as far as being achievable or the most. Go ahead.
One ear here and one here.
No, I'm not sure if that was part of this conversation, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't cutting anybody off. Bonnie, why don't we put in performance measure? We can also put a number of relationships developed with off-campus mental health providers. So maybe you guys can help with this part, the anticipated challenges, because this is an important aspect of you'll use to set some priorities. So what do you think are some challenges to getting MOUs with off-campus mental health service providers by the end of the first grant year? Feel free to type them in. If you want to chat like Leslie, please do, and I'll respond here on the air. Heidi's typing. Larry is typing as well. A couple people. Melanie's typing too. Great. We'll let those responses come in. Heidi says lack of capacity among service providers. So even outside campus, you're looking for off-campus providers. Maybe they don't have that capacity to take on some of the students that need referrals out also. Yeah, that'd certainly be something to consider. So Bonnie, I think we can certainly put that in the anticipated challenges. There we go. Melanie's saying legal terms / confidentiality / sharing of information. Certainly something to work out with the providers and provider organizations that you want to partner with. Yeah, certainly that can be a challenge. Larry says administrative concerns about risk management could hold up the process of getting these agreements in place. Larry. I see Ellen is also typing. While she's typing, Bonnie, why don't we go ahead and put in the legal terms, confidentiality, sharing of information, and we'll put in Larry's response as well. Ellen says potential inconsistency of sharing information. Ellen, if you're unmuted, do you mind elaborating on that a little bit, just so I make sure I have a full understanding of what you're saying?
Sure. What we've experienced sometimes is not everyone in the off-campus site has been informed of the agreement, and so sometimes it's hit and miss getting information from them.
Sense of belonging, so on and so forth.
I see. Thanks, Ellen. So everyone on staff that you could be partnering with or utilizing as a service provider off campus needs to know about the agreement. Yeah, that's certainly a concern.
Right.
Bonnie, we can put that one in there saying not all off-campus providers are aware or informed of the agreement.
She'll get notes, but she says she feels like she misses a lot.
Great. So I think we've got a nice objective here. So, Bonnie, why don't we cut that first objective out, if it's not already there, and we'll go down and do just a couple actions for this one. You can help think this through with us, and then I want to make sure we get time to do the prioritization part. So, as you can see there on the screen now, this is another table, and when you get the hard copy of this, you'll see that the tables are broken out here. We've stuck the second objective at the top of this one, and we'll do it just like with the other ones. We'll think up some actions here. Can anybody think of an example action we might take to try and obtain these memorandums of understanding with off-campus mental health service providers? I see Ellen is typing right now. And while Ellen's typing, if anybody else has any ideas they want to say out loud, you can please go ahead. We'll get those in as well. Ellen says determine point person for each organization. So Ellen's, I think we can put as an action, but I think the larger action kind of speaks to identifying which ones those are. You kind of take stock of what the availability is of those service providers or service providing organizations around the campus. So yeah, why don't we, I think Bonnie's got the idea here, identify the providers and also determine a point person at their organization. Sally says provide them with a basic template if they don't have one. Sally, can you clarify, do you mean a basic template of a MOU or a basic template of some other kind of language around confidentiality or something else?
A basic template of an MOU, because some of our organizations haven't done that before. So we just provide them with a basic template, and then they either go to legal or they do it themselves.
And have you found in the past with other providers that's been a nice step partnership-wise? Does it kind of ease things in for you guys?
It absolutely does. It kind of eases you in the door because they really don't know where to start, especially if you're just talking to a point person and they don't know the legalities. And they can take it to whomever and say, well, this is what they have, and they'll say, oh, that's a good idea. We can do that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Alan, actually, I wanted to go back to your line about a point person. Are there particular things that you ask that point person to do when you go to this person at an organization, or have you in the past?
Well, they serve as the spokesperson, so you want to get to the right person. Sometimes you get the runaround. Who is the person that has the ability to put the MOU together? So I don't want to talk to the social worker in the psych unit if that's not the person that's going to be able to be the decision maker and kind of the mover and shaker. So, you know, and also not wanting to talk with multiple people, having to repeat the story, the message. So having a liaison from each end has been very helpful.
Great, thanks for elaborating, Ellen. I want to read out Heidi's example, identify the organizations and make contact with the organizations. So I think that folded in kind of to the first one here, determine their capacity and what types of clientele they service. So I think that's the second half there, I think, is a little added piece. Yeah, we can add a little bit to this particular action. Thanks, Bonnie. Okay, I'll throw in, we just have a few, let's say about 6-7 minutes left to this particular section. So let's go with another one. Bonnie, I'll contribute one here. Hopefully folks can build on it, much like they did with the first action here. How about joining and attending, I don't know if this is possible, county mental health coalition meetings to build relationships with providers that might be present there? Has anybody done something similar to that in the past? Okay, hearing none there. Maybe something a little less likely, perhaps, in your area.
I think we do that a lot. We've established we established a regular quarterly coalition meeting, both locally and regionally, with
Great, thanks for
county mental health and other mental health providers. That's a really important one. That's
great. And if you don't mind me asking who was speaking there, I'm not familiar with everyone's voice.
Sorry, I'm Larry Larry Schallert from College of the Canyons in Santa Clarita.
Great. Thanks a lot for chatting in there. Larry, so, you know, since you had mentioned that's something you had some experience with, what kind of resources were needed to get that kind of regular meeting underway? I know getting on some kind of schedule like that, that can take a lot of relationship management, partnership building. What was that like for you?
Well, you know, it's like knowing who to call, like somebody else, you know, mentioned. It's knowing who to contact both verbally and through email. So it's not like a cold call per se. So you sort of know, and then you email them with nice invites. And at first we used kind of mailings, but now we're down to emails and that sort of thing. And attending other DMH coalition meetings is really important, so you get to know kind of the, the hierarchy and the chain of command. So once you have those relationships, it's not hard to just ask people to attend meetings, and it's not a hard sell because everybody kind of gets it once you talk to them about it, what's needed. Does that make
Great,
sense?
thanks. Yeah, that does make sense. And I'm going to try and paraphrase here for Bonnie to type in. It sounds like spending time cultivating the relationship was important, and then also learning their chain of command, as you phrased it. I think that also gets to kind of what Sally said, I think, just in terms of learning who you need to speak to for what particular information or work that you'd like to do with them. So that's great. Does anybody have any resources needed, TA needs, partners for the first one there? Identify off-campus mental health providers around the campus. Let's stick with that particular part of it. You can chat or speak up as we've been doing. Okay, hearing none there. That's okay. Oh, I see Susan's typing. I spoke too soon. I'll give you a chance to type in there, Susan. Oh, Susan's lost audio. Okay, we'll try and help you get that figured out there, Susan. So identify off-campus mental health providers around campus, resources you might need. Well, if you wanted to research mental health providers in the area to identify them, you might try to create an inventory of that. And I know that there's a grantee that's funded now. I think one of you can help me out with this one that created a kind of a log of the existing services in the area. Bonnie?
Yeah, that's George Mason University. Leslie Gear, I believe her last name is. She sent an email to the campus listserv last week about the referral database they made. They used a template they worked with this organization, and it wasn't too expensive, and they made this really great referral database. I looked at it and I was really impressed because you could sort by insurance, gender of counselor, distance from campus, things like that. So I'm certain the email went out to the campus grantee listserv. If you are not on the grantee listserv, email your SPRC prevention specialist and they'll add you. And George Mason University's contact information is on the SPRC website, www.sprc.org/grantees.
Thanks, Bonnie. Looks like coming to time for this particular section, at least, and I want to make sure we get enough time for Bonnie to go over how you might think about prioritizing these objectives to select what to move forward with in this first year. So I think what we'll do is move on to Bonnie's part, but before I go there, I do want to clarify one point about this particular worksheet and just kind of how it flows. So you saw that there's the pages, we have a separate page for the objective and then the actions associated with it. So if you printed this out, let's say one of these would be for one goal. So let's say if you have 3 goals, you'd have like 3 of these associated sheets because each one would have its own set of objectives and actions. So I think once you take a look at the full thing, not on screen, you'll be able to see what that looks like. But yeah, this is kind of the way at least Bonnie and I visualized it to try and do it with you here. It's one goal per set of sheets with associated objectives and actions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie for the next part of the webinar, and she's going to kind of close the loop on really what the intent of this worksheet is for. And I want to thank everybody for chatting in and also for speaking out loud. Bonnie's going to give you probably a chance to that as well if you have feedback for her. So thanks, and Bonnie, you can take it away.
Hi, everyone. So now we're going to focus on prioritizing your objectives and your goals. And, it's the beginning of your grant. You're probably so excited. You have so much to do. But it's hard to know what to start with first and what's going to take the most time, what you think you can get off the ground. So I'm going to move this to the first objective, increasing overall student utilization of counseling services for on-campus 5% each grant year. And so something to think of, so we talked a little bit about the resources needed, TAs, partners, but kind of part of that in there too is the challenges that might be part of that to think about prioritizing. Does anybody want to chat in thoughts on prioritizing what, what considerations you put into place? What you take into account when deciding what grant objective to start first? And Susan is typing. Thank you, Susan. And Ellen is typing too. Multiple attendees are typing. It's very exciting. So Susan said we are starting with getting our coalition together and getting crisis protocols in place. That's great. That's a great thing to prioritize. Getting your coalition together is important because your partnerships and collaborations can make a huge difference in the grant. And getting your crisis and protocols in place is also very important. You probably already have talked with your SPRC prevention specialist about this or will be about that. And Ellen Gold said, conducting a SWOT analysis to help determine what we have the capacity to do when. For those of you who don't know, a SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, I believe. And that's a really great way to think about, what the strengths and weaknesses of your programs are and challenges there. Maureen said, we want to get infrastructure in place to be able to handle increased demand. That's great. You probably had that discussion with your SPRC prevention specialist this week about that. This month about that, about your counseling center capacity, and if you haven't, you will soon. Susan said, we've also joined our advisory council with a health task force for our campus and now have a standing health council for our campus who will lead our project. That's great, and that goes towards the creating partnerships and collaborations for your grant. That is so important to keep that going, and also getting buy-in from those of you on your campus, and also just making sure what you're creating is what the campus wants, that you're working with the community. Sally said we identified 10 departments on campus when applying for the grant to get them to support our efforts. We've now met with all of them in person and have specific tasks for each department and given them an in-person overview of our grant goals and objectives. That's fantastic. So it sounds like everyone's doing a great job of establishing objective partnerships and collaborations and working on your grant goals and objectives to helping prioritize. Zoe, can we stop sharing now? Great. Hold on a second, guys. All right. So, some things to keep in mind for when thinking about prioritizing. So, the first thing to think about is campus readiness. So, as you wrote your grant, you probably got a sense about this, but just thinking about how suicide prevention is perceived on your campus and if it's seen as an important issue by members of the community. If you feel that there's not enough buy-in from senior administrators or key stakeholders that suicide is an important issue on your campus, then the first thing to prioritize may be ways to affect the campus culture to make suicide prevention a priority. Because, it's great to get MOUs with outside mental health providers and do a social awareness campaign and try to do gatekeeper training in every classroom. But if the campus isn't supportive of those efforts and of sustainability, that's not going to help you make long-term change.
So if this is the case, you may want to prioritize starting a task force or campus coalition on mental health, like many of you have already said, or coordinating individual meetings with key people on campus, like the Dean of Student Affairs, President of the Student Senate, or the Provost to get them on board. And notice that I said the President of the Student Senate. Sometimes we forget that students are part of this too. So, it's always a great idea to try to work with student members and have them involved in grant efforts. Then think about what do you need to have in place before you start grant activities. So that kind of goes towards capacity, which again, some of you guys have already mentioned because you guys are great. So, you're excited to do gatekeeper training and your awareness campaigns and depression screenings, but your hope for that is that doing these will cause greater demand for counseling services, so more people will be contacting counseling for appointments, or faculty and staff will because they have a concern about a student. But in this case, you might need to think about what are ways that we can increase staff capacity to handle this increased demand. And if you don't think you have the capacity to deal with it, and it can be tough, we already know how overworked your counseling centers are, you might want to spend time designing other methods of delivering counseling services, building relationships with outside providers, or designing triage systems. If you don't have counseling services on your campus, and some of you don't, then you would spend that time working with off-campus providers to make sure they could handle an increase of students and that you have enough people, you have systems in place to refer them to. And obviously having comprehensive crisis protocols in place is an important part of this as well. And then also think about what's realistically achievable during your grant period. You have 3 years, and you will undoubtedly accomplish so much during your 3-year grant and make substantial changes on your campus. But you won't be able to achieve everything. So think about what activities of yours have the most momentum and the most impact. And then also think, when prioritizing, think about what are your program's assets and barriers and what works well on your campus. Where are there strong partnerships and where are there champions? For example, if on your campus a lot of students are involved, they're often very religious and use religious services a lot, then you want to go to your campus ministry as your strong partnerships. If there's a big sense of community on your campus, then you want to use that as momentum for your campaign. Think about what programs are already in existence that you can build off of. For example, if health services gets 10 minutes during first-year orientation, can you get 2 minutes of that to talk about mental health? Conversely, what are the barriers? For example, lack of staff time or capacity. We know counseling is very busy, as we talked about. Staff time, maybe health services doesn't always have the time to do depression screening with their visits. Or lack of resources or competing priorities, turf issues between departments, which unfortunately happen, or issues with buy-in about suicide prevention work. And then also think about some activities will take longer than others. An example of that is crisis protocols. Creating comprehensive crisis protocols can take a while. The reason is that you want to get everyone on board, the different departments, the higher administrators, campus police, residence life, faculty, staff. You want to get them all on board, talking about it, signing off, and disseminated. You often have to work collaboratively with many different groups on campus about that, so that might take a while. And then also, as we always like to say, think about sustainability. Think about your suicide prevention as building a house, as this lovely picture. Right now, you're doing the different components of building the house. You're laying the groundwork, you're putting up the walls, the roof, and all these different components of what you're doing right now are contributing to the infrastructure. Don't worry so much right now about maintaining your house and how to make the windows solar paneled and roof leakage. Think about building the house right now. And now that's it. Were there any questions? Did we want to chat in? If anyone wants to chat in, any questions? I don't see any questions about that, so now we will move to the Q&A section. And over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Bonnie. So I hope we kind of give you a picture of what we're asking you to do as a part of your self-paced activity this month. And I think what we try to do is give you a preview of what we're asking you to do in your teams. And really it comes down to working together and not only just, the point, I guess I should say, is not to fill in this worksheet. You guys have the information that's in this worksheet, as I said. The point is to get it all down in a way that makes it easier for you to make some determinations about what to start with, to get the ball rolling forward. And really you'll be weighing your anticipated challenges against, what kind of resources you have, what resources you need, what kind of TA that SPRC can provide you with, what kind of resources we could try and provide you with, and what you have on campus. So I do welcome any questions regarding the worksheet as a self-paced activity, any of the items that got covered otherwise. Please feel free to chat or type that in. You can go ahead.
And while people are typing in, I'll just give a reminder that on your prevention specialist phone calls this month, your check-in calls with SAMHSA, we'll be talking about designing crisis protocols. And you should have received a crisis protocol inventory sheet from your PS. So that's coming up this month.
See a couple folks typing. I'll give you a chance to finish that up, and I'll read them out for the group. Just give Alan and Larry here a chance to finish typing. Ellen's question is, how does this template we will be completing relate to the template we followed for our monthly call? That's a good question, Ellen. So on your calls with SAMHSA, you're being asked to kind of update a ongoing monthly report of your actions that are taking place. And I think what we try to do here is give you a wider look at the overall work you're doing over the course of the 3 years of your, to make some determinations about the first year. I think it's a good question because it could seem duplicative, I suppose, because you are filling that out month to month. But that's more for the immediate changes that are happening. And I think this could help you decide what goes into those every month. So let's say if you've got an objective that you can't really act on quite yet in this first year, that can be on what you have for the monthly calls, but you wouldn't necessarily be continuously updating that one because there may not be updates for it. But so let's say you do this worksheet this month and there's 3 objectives you decide to move on that seem like they're feasible and you've got the partnerships and the capacity to do them. Those could be the things that you have in that monthly update that you're continuously updating. So these things would all end up in there at some point or another, but this prioritizing part would help you decide what would be updated in the near term, let's say, on those monthly calls. I hope that answers your question, Ellen. If not, please let me know and I'll clarify. Larry says, speaking of crisis protocols, can you give an example of a comprehensive protocol for a community college? This would help with our initial interdepartmental meeting. Instead of reinventing the wheel, it would be nice to have an example. Larry, great question. I have 2 suggestions there. I'm not going to point to a specific crisis protocol here because I don't think that would be too helpful, but they do exist. There are good examples there, and your prevention specialist can help you with that. And you can also, if you'd like, use the campus listserv to get kind of a wider pick of what different crisis protocols look like. Your prevention specialist can give you a few examples that we feel are good examples of a comprehensive protocol. And you said specifically for a community college, so to hone in a little bit, I'm not sure, Bonnie, if you have a statement about the contribution there for a community college in specific?
Well, I was just going to say that, we have about 14 community colleges, actually, I'm sorry, that's 19 who have been who have been funded by GLS, some current, some alumni. And a couple of weeks ago, Sheila Christian from SPRC sent out an email to all the community colleges with the notes from a community college affinity group that we held a year ago, and also with the contact information. So that might be, you might want to send an email to the group or to some of the members of the community college who said, please feel free to contact me with questions. So Larry, I can resend you that email if you can't find it in your email, 'cause I know you get lots of emails. I know it's so great that we have so many community colleges. There's often special considerations. So Larry, I really understand why, you would want a crisis protocols specifically for a community college.
Thanks, Bonnie. Other than Alan or Larry, Larry types in thanks. Anybody else have any other questions they'd like to type in regarding anything we covered today? Well, I'm hearing none. And I just want to reiterate that with the worksheet, which you'll be sent if you haven't gotten it already from your prevention specialist, it is one goal per worksheet to help you think through how to complete that. And if you need additional support with that as you're going through and doing this self-paced activity for this month, you can certainly contact your prevention specialist. And I'm not going to belabor our time commitment here. I mean, if there aren't any other questions, I don't see any reason why we can't adjourn a little bit early today. So be on the lookout for an email with this information with respect to this worksheet if you haven't gotten it already. And I want to thank everyone for their contributions. Sally's typing, so I don't want to interrupt there. Thanks for contributing today, whether by chat or over the phone. We really appreciate it. Sally wishes everybody a happy holidays. And before we close, I'm just going to move us ahead one more slide. Just a couple reminders. As I said, the self-paced activity is to do this worksheet. It's due January 5th. The next orientation series webinar is on Thursday, December 11th, and that's an ICF webinar, so it'll be about the cross-site evaluation. And as a reminder also, all these orientation series webinars are archived on the SPRC website. So if you're still hiring on staff, waiting for people to join your team, they can review these at a later time, very similar to how you experienced it here. They just won't be able to participate. And here's contact information for myself and Bonnie, and you can also contact your prevention specialist in specific, and they'll help you out with any questions you might have. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Have a great holiday season, as Sally says, and we'll catch you for the next webinar from SPRC. Have a good afternoon and rest of the day wherever you are.